I caught up with former Pirate Phil Garner for the Morning Rush. He had a 16-year Major League career, then managed for 15 years with the Brewers, Tigers, and Astros. Phil begins by discussing his time as a member of the 1979 World Champion Pirates.
We had leadership in Willie Stargell, who was all affectionately called Pops. Everybody loved Willie, but he was a team leader. And you had Dave Parker, who was also a team leader, who was, when you hear guys talk about, I'll do my talking on the field, I'll do my leading on the field. Well, Parker did that, for a couple of years in there. Parker was absolutely the best player, I would say, in baseball, but he certainly was in the National League. So we had the dominant player, and we had good pitching. Candelaria was pitching well, and then we get Blyleven, he's pitching well. And, of course, we had Bruce Keeson, who, God rest his soul, passed away, was pitching well. And then we had a veteran, Jim Rooker, who, was solid on the team. And, of course, our bullpen ended up being really, really solid when Kent Tekulve emerged as our closer and got it done. So we had all the ingredients. We had super talent. We had speed with Omar Marino. And we had hotheads with Tim Foley and me. So we had all the ingredients of a good team. And we knew we could win. So you knew it was special when it started all coming together right after the All-Star break. We went on a roll and played really well. I think we won, at one point, 19 out of 21 games, some streak like that got us out in front, and we didn't look back. Ironically, all of us that were on the negotiating team in 1980 during the strike year were traded the following year. So I was traded in 1981 to the Astros. So I don't hold any animosity towards the Galbraith family on that. I was treated very well in Pittsburgh. I loved the people. I loved the town. And I did like the ownership, even though we had I was part and parcel to the negotiations. And part of the problem, as they saw it, I held no animosity towards them whatsoever. It was business.
You ended your playing career in 1988. What were the signs leading up that you could see that you just weren't recovering as quickly? I spoke with some former players who maybe a ground ball came to them. I got it. No, they didn't get it because they were a step slower. Could you see that little by little? Was it starting maybe in your middle 30s or so?
I didn't want to play to the point where I embarrassed myself, and I knew that I couldn't play every day. I felt like any given at bat or playing any one game a couple of days a week, I could still compete. But the real thing that made it easy for me to call it a day was that I knew the end was near, but my back was hurting me so bad that each day was a chore to get ready to play. I'd go in, the trainers would work on my back, and I'd be able to make it through the game. But then after the game, getting in the car and driving home, by the time I got home, I was in a lot of pain. So I was taking a lot of anti-inflammatory drugs, which were not necessarily good for you, and I was in a lot of pain. So that made the decision a lot easier. Had I just had deteriorating skills and not as much pain, I might have wanted to hold on. But it becomes no fun when every day you go to the ballpark, which you're supposed to be playing and having fun, and it's really a chore to get ready to be out there for 2.5 hours, and then when it's over, you're back to pain again. I always wanted to play till I was 40, but I realized somewhere after 36, 35, I had lost a step. But the pain was also bothering me. Every time I tried to go catch a ball to my left, a ground ball, I found that I didn't want to catch it. It could bending over was just painful. And in the end, I started having to be platooned. I didn't like that. And so I always wanted to be the guy that played every inning of every ball game. So it was time to go. I had a good run and couldn't make it anymore.
Phil Garner joins us on the Morning Rush. You moved into managing in 1992. Were you thinking of coaching or managing during your playing days?
I was, and my original thought was that I was going to be a general manager. And then I began to realize I don't want to be in the front office. I like being on the field. And so I began to prepare for that. I'd do clinics. Teaching players is not the same. And teaching and managing players are not the same as playing. And a lot of people think that just because you were a player and might have been a good player, that therefore you can be a coach or a manager. Well, there's a different skill set involved there. And so I knew that and suspected that early on. And so I started doing a lot of clinics. And one of the ways that you can find out about a player and if he's going to be a good coach or a potential manager is just tell him to go out and teach some young kids how to throw or how to hit or how we run the bases and listen to how they talk. And you have to develop your stick. You have to develop your routine, and that happens. It comes naturally for an occasional player, but many times you have to develop that. So I would say that over the decade that I did that, I developed a routine on how I felt like I could relate with players, and you start paying attention to managing people, and managing people is different than teaching people a lot of times. Even though I think good managers are also good teachers, I had the good pleasure of almost the entirety of my career having very good people to work with, very good people to manage. And so there's only one or two players that I would say that were bad apples, and I don't think, unless you just let them do what they want to do, you're always going to have problems with those kind of players. But for the most part, I had good, solid players that that became leaders on the club. They were really good.
We're joined by Phil Garner on the Morning Rush, of course, talking about managing and the whole situation with the Astros, with the sign stealing. What was your feeling? You've been associated with the Astros. You're in that area. What was your first reaction when you heard about it, and how do you look at it now?
My first reaction, Bob Melvin had mentioned it to me. Bob Melvin, who is the manager of the Oakland A's, was my right-hand guy for a number of years, and he said, Gar, I think these guys are stealing signs and they're relaying them to players when they're hitting. So I said, well, you know how you fix that? And he said, I know, but we can't do that anymore. And, you fix it by, you put 3 sliders down, you have your catcher throw 3 sliders down, and on that third slider, when you hear somebody beat on a drum in a dugout, you throw a fastball at the guy's head. Well, he's leaning out thinking he's getting a slider, and he gets that. Well, that solves the problem. He goes right back to the dugout and say, guys, quit beat on a drum in a dugout. That solves it. And it's been time and time over 100 years in baseball. That's the way you fix the sign stealing problem. But modern times are different. I'm not going to wax poetic on the way baseball was or should be or whatever. Players just don't do that anymore. So you go to a third party, and the third party is the commissioner, and you tell the commissioner that needs to fix it. So I mentioned it to A.J. Hinch, who's become a good friend, and he did tell me at one time, he said, yes, and I'm trying to stop it. And then I think there's no question that the Astros used an illegal system, and that is that the television monitor was used in real time to transfer information down to a player in the dugout. They would transfer it to a hitter. They got punished for that, and they should have been punished for it. They got punished pretty doggone well, because some people are complaining that the players got immunity and they didn't get punished. Well, they're going to get punished pretty bad in the court of public opinion, and already have. It's really going to hurt the Astros. The Astros have used their minor league system to trade for guys the last 3 years to stay in the playoff hunt, and so not having a number 1 and 2 draft choice for the next 2 years is really, really going to hurt the Astros. They already don't have their minor league system's depleted, and that's going to show up. So the Astros got punished for that, and rightly so. They shouldn't take away the trophy. We can get into all kinds of reasons why in the history of baseball that you shouldn't take away the trophy after all this has happened, or the World Series trophy. But the thing that is disappointing me now, I think A.J. was the stand-up guy and says, look, I knew it was happening. I tried to stop it. I didn't do enough. So he's taking it. Jeff Lunau is trying to pass the buck and say he didn't know about it, and that's not true. He knew about it. The other guys, now here's where my disappointment is. My disappointment is now that I'm seeing guys like Altuve, and I'm almost certain, I'd be willing to bet pretty much that Altuve did not use the system. He didn't want them to do it. He kept telling them, don't do it when I'm at the plate. It messes me up. He's not the kind of hitter that wants to know what pitch is coming. He's the kind of hitter that sees ball and hits ball. He takes the bat to the ball. And so I think that there were several guys on the Astros that did not use the system and didn't want to use it, did not want it for whatever reasons, whether they didn't feel like it could help them or they didn't want to cheat. But they are taking the blame for the ones that did use the system and did cheat. What disappoints me now is, and this is where a man needs to stand up and be a man, is the players that were using the system, that were cheating, should come out and say, we are the ones that cheated. Altuve did not cheat. Reddick did not use the system, did not cheat. There's probably several others that did not use the system. So get off their case. We're the ones that need to take the heat. That's what disappoints me about this right now.
Joining us on the Morning Rush as we wrap things up, Phil Garner. Phil, you look back, and of course, people say, yeah, I remember him. He played a long time ago. I'm sure you get the fan mail and people that want autographs or whatever. Tell us about some funny letters you get and the cards you get in the mail.
Well, I do every day. I've been noticing when baseball season, the volume gets to go a little bit more. But on average, over the course of the year, I get about 5 letters a day, 4 to 5 letters for every day in the mailbox. And in those letters, I'll average about 3 to 4 cards every day. Sometimes I'll get letters with 10 cards. Sometimes I'll get letters with 1 card. And it is funny because we've gone over the years from people saying, you know, I love the way you play and I want to have your autograph on this, to I remember you when you were a player and you were pretty good. I'd like to have your autograph. And nowadays, my grandpa tells me you were a really good player and I'd like to have your autograph. So it's the conversation has changed a little bit over the years, but nonetheless, it's still pretty interesting. And I still get the ones, you know, you remember when you'd go to New York or Boston, it was famous. All the players used to say, the players would say, they'd be hanging over the stadium, give me your autograph, give me your autograph. You're my favorite player. You're my favorite player. Give me your autograph. And you were busy and you walked on by and the next thing they'd say out of your mouth, you're a lousy, no good bum, you know. So that went from being your favorite player to a lousy, no good bum, you know, if you didn't sign their autographs. So I make sure I sign them all and send them back because I don't want to end up being called a bum down the road.
Former Steeler John Cole told me that one time they had a get-together with Terry Bradshaw, and he was laughing, and he said he was walking down the street, and a lady said, ooh, you used to be Terry Bradshaw. And he said, I used to be, lady, but I ain't no more.
Yeah. Well, the one that I get now most often, and it's changed a lot, is that in the Houston area, people will come up to me and they'll say, do I know you? Did we work together? Where? I say, no, I'm getting that a lot these days now. They haven't put the 2 and 2 together. Then I'll say, well, I used to be a baseball player. Oh, for crying out loud, I remember. Yeah, it does change. And I'm surprised because I don't even recognize some of my former players unless they had a uniform on, you know. So to be recognized I'm still flattered by it, even though it's most unusual. And not most unusual for older people, unusual for kids.
Finally, what's the future for you?
Well, I have the good fortune of having my 3 children and 6 grandkids close by, all within about 7 miles of me. And, of course, the kids don't count anymore. It's the grandkids that count now. So I enjoy spending a lot of time with them. I play a lot of golf. And I recently bought a small ranch, and we're doing some stuff on that to have some fun, you know, to grow things. I want my grandkids to know where a hamburger comes from. So we're doing some things on our small little ranch to have the kids work. They got to mend fences. They got to cut down trees. They got to do some stuff like that to see how life really does work. So I'm having a good time right now.
Phil, thanks for joining us. You've always been a stand-up guy. I appreciate it. And, hey, you want to check how many letters you get today in the mailbox in a couple hours, right?
Okay, you bet.